You might have some amazing creative work, but without the right presentation, you might still be struggling to get the attention of potential clients and employees. In this video, I will show you some tried and tested methods for building a killer portfolio, which is guaranteed to elevate your work to new heights and help you to get hired or get more clients. The tips and techniques I'm going to share with you in this video are mainly based on my experience as a designer presenting my work, but also as someone who organized and hosted several portfolio review events where I've seen so many creative work and so many different portfolios. So there's a lot of things that immediately stood out and was really engaging, and there was also common mistakes that a lot of people do when they try to present their work. So I tried to collect all of these things that I've learned from my work and from seeing others' work, and I organized them into 5 points. On each point, I'm going to go on much more detail, but without any further delay, let's get started with tip number 1, less is more. This is probably one of the most important things to remember when you put together your portfolio. So you don't want to overwhelm anyone with having hundreds of projects or even several dozens of projects. Probably the sweet spot is around 6 to 12 projects. Maybe go up to 20 is still okay, but not more than that. And anything less than 6 doesn't feel strong enough. So normally when I see someone's work, if it's around that range, I feel like it's a good, healthy portfolio, which probably will have the best work from that creative, and it's not going to share all kinds of different things that are less relevant. So that's one of the first things to remember. And there's even a term, the 3C rule: curated, clear, and concise. That's what you should really keep in mind when you are selecting your work to include in your portfolio. So here's an example, a professional illustrator and graphic designer, Barbara. You get a really good idea on the different techniques and even tools she's using. So we can see immediately there's some pencil drawings, there's some ink drawings, but we also have the vector graphics here, watercolor. So it really gives us a good idea. So by just simply looking at the thumbnails of these projects, we already get a good sense of her style and also the type of projects that she was involved in. Like you can see she worked on book covers, playing cards, and even packaging for products. So remember, it's not about the quantity and the amount of projects, it's about the presentation of them and that you filter out and really select your best work. Now, having said that, on Behance, of course, you will find other professional artists who share way more than 12 or 20 projects. So we can see this portfolio, for example, again, obviously amazing illustration style, and we can see some really interesting projects here. We can scroll down and there's plenty of more here. So it's probably closer to, I don't know, 80 or 100 projects. So this is not a bad thing. And don't get me wrong, you can show more work than what I mentioned before. But I feel like there's a couple of projects here that are either the same project, just different images, or maybe, I don't know, different takes on the same style. But in these cases, if you have very similar work, like I would say these 4 illustrations here, maybe even this one, should be all merged together into one project. So try not to overwhelm the viewer, or especially if you're applying for a job, showing very similar projects next to each other, because that's just confusing. And for someone who doesn't know you, you want to really introduce yourself and guide your viewer through the different type of projects or type of styles that you use in your work. So make sure you don't repeat things or create projects that are too similar to each other. Instead, combine them together into one bigger presentation of various work. Here's another example of an artist that we've done an interview recently on our channel. So Toby's work is again organized, and you can find a series in a way, for example, under this project. So the monochrome creatures, once we go into it, it's explained that it's actually 18 illustrations, but it's all very quickly and briefly introduced in this project. So instead of submitting or putting up them as separate projects, it's really nicely curated into one single project. Even if you're not doing something as a series, if you see an overarching theme, consider putting them together into one project instead of scattering them around and just bulking up your portfolio. So once again, remember, less is more. Now let's move on to number 2, variety and unity. So this is more about the theme of your portfolio, and we already seen some of these artists and having something like a very distinctive style immediately visible once we look at the thumbnails of their projects. But there is a very important thing to consider, and that's whether you want to harmonize and keep even the colors and styles similar throughout all of your projects in your portfolio, or whether you want to show variety and all kinds of different things. Now, my take is that if you are doing varied work, you definitely want to show the variation and the full spread of work that you've done, but you also still want to make sure that the overall look of your portfolio is pleasing. So, for example, this artist does a brilliant job at tying everything together. Again, he has a very distinct style, illustration style, but we have still various colors used here, so there's not like a color theme, but still everything nicely connects together, and when we look at the work, we can immediately tell it's the same artist. If you've seen the previous part of the portfolio topic, you probably remember me mentioning Dribble, where you have shots and you can only use like a small single image to present your work. The thumbnails on Behance in a way are like shots. So you really have to think about the framing and what part of the work that you are showing is going to be included there. So the selection and editing of your thumbnail is a crucial part of how your portfolio is going to look. So it's really that first impression that you need to pay attention to. And I've seen so many portfolios where the thumbnails were not that engaging, but once I clicked on them, I've actually seen so much interesting content inside. And once the artist improved their thumbnails, it's just got to like a completely different level. So you might have amazing projects, but if the thumbnails or even the order of the thumbnails are not pleasing to look at, then you will lose people's interest quickly. It is very similar to Instagram, where you really have to consider what you post in which order you post them, because that will give, again, that first impression when someone's checking out your profile. Tip number 3 is to always stay current. So a portfolio should be a living, breathing thing. You shouldn't just work on it once and then let it stay like that for years, because that's not how the industry works. People like to see your current work and what you've been up to recently. So try not to include anything older than like 5 years, especially if you are active and you're doing a lot of things. Try to concentrate on your more recent work. Of course, you can keep in some really successful projects. Maybe you work for like big clients. That's nice to show in your portfolio, but aim for updating and refreshing your portfolio often. And if you are like me and you forget to update your portfolio, you can set reminders monthly or quarterly to make sure that you don't forget uploading and refreshing your projects. Because that's also something that you can do. You don't necessarily need to create new projects or publish new ones. You can also just revamp older projects. Maybe it's a project, again, similar to what we talked about before, that collects a couple of different illustrations or graphics that can be tied together. And maybe you've done similar ones. Maybe let's just say you've done sticker designs and you've been doing more since you published it first as a project. So all of those new stickers can be added in there, and then that page or presentation is just going to keep growing. Now, once you start following several artists on Behance, you can see the way that they prefer to share their recent work, and you will be able to see certain artists who would share multiple projects on the same day. So this way of searching shows me a timeline of the artists I'm following and what type of projects and how many projects they shared recently. And we can see Justina's, the lady's work that we've seen earlier, actually published 3 projects probably on the same day. So you can see all these 3 are from her. And there's also this other artist called Andre Ducci, who also shared 3 projects in a sequence, probably again on the same day. So this can mean that they either worked on 3 projects simultaneously, or maybe they just have a routine of sharing work at the end of each month. And then these were the projects that they worked on during that time. So it doesn't actually matter if you upload multiple projects on the same day or you spread it out a bit more. It's not like Instagram where you have to post daily or weekly or anything like that. It's more about how you organize your work and how frequently you update it. Tip number 4 is to tell a story with each of your projects. Now, we already seen a couple of interesting projects before, but I'm going to show you a few more here as good examples. So keep that in mind, that you're not just showing the final result. Your aim is to tell the story or the process from start to finish. So highlight obviously the most interesting details, but also mention the tools that you used, why you chose certain directions. You can even show things that didn't end up in the final work, because that will also help to see your thought process. And that's what most clients are interested in. And also fellow creatives, when I see someone's full process presented in a project, I am just immediately more engaged and interested in reading through and also following that artist. Because you can learn a lot from other artists' workflows and, of course, be inspired. But as a creative, remember, it's not just about showing the final artwork, it's about telling a story, how you got there, show the full journey. So here's another amazing artist, Brian Miller, and we can check any of his projects and you will find that he's actually going really in depth explaining the whole workflow. So let's just check this one. If I go down, first it just starts with the final artwork, but then there is a bit of backstory, exactly what he decided to do, and he's even sharing advice to other artists, things that he learned from doing this project, which is brilliant. But then when we scroll further down, we can see a very nice composition showing. On the top left, first is just simply the outlines, then colors, and then the final art test. And then going further down, there's a bit more explanation, a couple of other pieces, some more sketches, and so on and so forth, even showing the different color tests or variations, and then the textures, details, and then we get to a couple of additional drawings here. So you can see, obviously, it's a lot of work and it's a very long project, but it just shows that some people actually spend a lot of time really thinking about how to present their work and explaining their whole workflow and the whole journey, as I mentioned before. And finally, tip number 5 is tailoring your portfolio. Now, this doesn't always apply, but if you are invited to a very important job interview, it's something that you are really excited and hoping to get, then it's probably worth spending some time and tailorizing your portfolio and deciding which projects to include, or maybe even add some additional ones that you were not thinking of including before. So this is when it's useful to have Adobe Portfolio, especially if your work is on Behance. And this is something I mentioned in the previous part. So when you have a Creative Cloud subscription, you also have Adobe Portfolio, that something is free to use and you can connect it to your own domain. But most importantly, it is synced to your Behance account and you can choose to include or remove projects. So you can enable and disable projects, and that way you can very quickly tailorize it. So I've done it in the past when I went to job interviews, that I actually removed a few or even shuffled it around here, while on my Behance I still had more. Let's say I had 20 or 30 projects there, but in my Adobe Portfolio I only had a selection of them. Those projects that were more relevant to the client I was meeting or for the job interview that I was attending. And when it comes to sitting down and presenting your work and walking someone through your portfolio, it is very important that you need to be prepared to tell stories that maybe are not even written down, or just simply be passionate about talking about all the projects that you're showing in the portfolio. So definitely avoid saying things like, I didn't really enjoy working on this, or this wasn't as much fun to work on, because what you should have in your portfolio are the things that are more passionate about and the things that you want to do in the future. And this is a very important advice. So don't include anything in the portfolio that you don't want to continue doing in the future. So let's say you are mainly interested in logo design and you've done several of those and you show them in your portfolio. And these are the type of clients and projects that you are trying to get. But at the same time, maybe you worked also on a couple of websites and you also show those on your portfolio. However, you are not really keen to work on those anymore. And it is a difficult question because you want to show variety and you want to show different skills. But if you are not interested in doing websites and rather focus on doing more logos in the future, then what's the point in including those website designs in your portfolio? So that's just a very simplified explanation, but hopefully it makes sense. And keep that in mind. Try to include projects in your portfolio that you can talk about and you can be passionate about, and ignore the things that you don't want to really continue doing in the future. Now, although these were the 5 main points that I wanted to go through, I still want to talk a bit about how to utilize social media for, again, supporting your portfolio. But before we move on, I just wanted to let you know about our graphic design survival kit, which is a completely free content that you can sign up to on our site. So when you are on our site, you just have to scroll down, and where you see a picture of me, that's where you can sign up. We spent several months putting this guide together, and it can help you in finding your place in the creative industry. So we talk about the different job roles, we talk about the different sectors and the skills needed in each of them and how you can improve. And we share loads of useful resources that you can access for free. So if you haven't already signed up, probably it's the best time to do it now. But as I promised, let me point out a couple of things to keep in mind when you use your social media to support your portfolios. First of all, Pinterest is a great site, again, mainly to collect inspiration, but also to present your work. So besides using Dribble and Behance and other sites to share your work, you can also put your work up as pins, and you will be surprised to see how much traffic and views you will get through this platform. So here's an example, 3 pins all leading to the same blog post, but each of them got so many views. These 2 got more than 500,000 views and also lots of clicks. So as you can see, Pinterest can be really effective, but also consider to create multiple pins with slightly different ways of presenting the same work, because you never know which one will really perform well or better than the others. And there's no restrictions, so you can create as many pins as you want. So it's a great way of supporting your portfolio, and you can include links that will go straight to a Behance project or even to your site, whatever you want. It's a completely free platform to use whatever you want people to find, or whatever platform you want to bring more traffic to. If you are on Pinterest, make sure you check our profile out and see the boards that we created for helping you finding inspiration in all kinds of different areas. Now, Facebook is also a very useful platform. Mainly, in my opinion, it's great for finding events and meetups. Once you start joining different interest groups, you will be recommended so many interesting things, including events, workshops, and even webinars that you probably wouldn't know about otherwise. And last but not least, of course, Instagram is one of the best social platforms for presenting your work. It's a very visual platform, and you can actually use it as a portfolio. I've seen many artists switching on to using Instagram as their primary portfolio or their primary tool for getting new work. And it is great for photographers, illustrators, graphic designers, motion designers. So highly recommend to have an account, and also make sure you keep updating it. And here it's probably the most important to be a bit more present. So you don't want to just have an account and never update it. Frequency here is much more important than on sites like Behance. There's a couple of things I've written down here that can be useful to consider, but there's one thing I would like to highlight, and that's the fact that you should be limiting yourself how much you use Instagram and in general social media daily. Or if you're using an iPhone, you can set even restrictions. So let's say after 30 minutes a day, you will be blocked out of using those apps. But you don't have to be that harsh. You can just simply try to reduce the amount you use it. Because if you keep checking other people's work in general, whether it's social media or even apps like Behance, you probably will feel overwhelmed and comparing yourself to others, and it can easily backfire. So what I mean is, when you use Instagram to share maybe one of your work, don't get stuck on it checking out other people's work more than, let's say, a healthy amount of time, 10 minutes. Because if you spend half an hour or more each time you pick it up and use it, it's just going to, first of all, take away precious time from creating your new work. And also it might actually stop you, because you will be, again, comparing yourself to others, which is not healthy. So you have to find that fine balance between sharing your work, getting inspiration, but then also crack on and do your work. So remember, don't get stuck on social media. That's definitely not going to help you in the long run. And that's all I wanted to share with you in this video. I hope you found it useful. If you haven't seen the first part, in which I talk about the different platforms where you can create your portfolio, make sure you check it out. You can find it on our channel. And if you haven't already subscribed, this is probably a good time to do so. And also, don't forget to hit the little bell icon if you want to be notified whenever we publish a new video. Let us know in the comment section, what would you like us to cover next time on this series? Click on the link in the description or the join button to become a member if you want to work on future projects with us and see the whole design or illustration process live. Thanks a lot for watching. Like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Have fun learning, guys, and I will see you in the next one.